Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Soul Land 2 Part 128 based on novel. So let's start. He shouted furiously and kept on struggling. His soul power kept on seeping out, but it couldn't change the fact that he had been fatally wounded. The life energy of a titled Dolor was extremely terrifying. Even after suffering such a fatal injury, which was a result of the devouring power of the Golden Dragon Spear and the judgment of the Judgment Sword, Wang Yihan was still alive. Yihan had already regained a streak of his consciousness when the Mad Bull Dolor had completely unleashed his strength. He blocked Ji Juechen. Even though the two of them were flung away, Yihan took close to 90% of the impact. His solo battle armor played a crucial role at this moment. It was impossible for him to block the all-out attack of a titled Dolor, but Wang Yihan was unable to attack given the state he was in. He could only release whatever external strength he had. Yihan spat out a mouthful of blood, but he wasn't too seriously injured. Ji Juechen grabbed hold of him in the air. He didn't thank Yihan, but only patted his shoulder. Everyone from Shrek was scattered in the air right now. They watched as Wang Yihan put up his final struggle. Right now, reinforcements from the Star Luo Empire had already arrived. The White Tiger Duke was personally here. There were also other titled Dolor from their respective Soul Engineer legions. The Star Luo Empire had too much information about Wang Yihan, the leader of the evil tyrant Soul Engineer Legion. However, they still felt a little unbelieving that Wang Yihan had been subjected to such fatal injuries right now. He was the leader of the evil tyrant Soul Engineer Legion. He was actually surrounded and attacked by 8 soul sages from Shrek Academy. These titled Dolor were confident of taking Wang Yihan on in a close combat fight. However, they also couldn't deny that the survivability of a soul engineer of the same tier was stronger. Would Wang Yihan have a lack of powerful soul tools on him? His Empyrean Blaze combined offense and defense. Furthermore, he had great control over his Empyrean Blaze. However, Wang Yihan's struggle lasted for a few minutes in the air before he finally dropped indignantly from the sky. Shu Sancha was already back to his original form. He lifted his golden Xuanwu shield and his 4th soul ring flashed before he managed to drag Wang Yihan's corpse over. How precious was the corpse of a Class 9 soul engineer? No one knew. This was because there had never been a situation in the Sun Moon Empire's history that the corpse of a Class 9 soul engineer had landed in an enemy's hands. Wang Yihan was the first. Jiang Nan was a little worried as she looked at Yihan. Right now, Yihan had already regained his awareness even though he was still bugged by the side effects of his Haodong palm. He gently nodded to confirm that Wang Yihan was already dead through his spiritual detection. Great! Nan Xiuqiu cheered and hugged Yi Gai, who was beside her. Yi Gai's body suddenly became a little unstable. She almost couldn't control her flying-type soul tool. Even though she could use her wings to fly, it was very draining on her soul power. Most of the time, she would use her flying-type soul tool. Jing Ziyan also wore a smile on her face. Ji Juechen looked as indifferent as ever, as if the last strike had nothing to do with him. Tang Wutong calmly opened her dragon wings and drifted closer to Yihan. She didn't seem to be affected by Wang Yihan's death. Right now, all of her attention was drawn to Yihan. Her gaze was focused, but no one could guess what she was thinking. The White Tiger Duke led the other titled Dolor as they came over. They first came beside Shu Sancha and seriously checked Wang Yihan's condition. A titled Dolor who appeared to be in his 60s nodded before saying, "Yes, it's Wang Yihan, the leader of the evil tyrant Soul Engineer Legion." A look of delighted surprise soon appeared on the faces of the other titled Dolor. This was probably the best outcome that the Star Luo Empire had achieved since the war had started. Even though the Empire wasn't really responsible for killing Wang Yihan, such a result was good enough to boost the morale of the troops. It was a morale booster for all the deflated soul engineers who had witnessed the deaths of more than 2,000 soul masters the last time around. The White Tiger Duke came beside Yihan and was a little perplexed as he looked at him. Yihan, you should have left it to us this time. Hui Yuhao twisted his head to look at him, but didn't say anything. There was an indifferent look in his eyes. He even appeared to be cold. Such an expression left the White Tiger Duke a little stunned. He couldn't understand it. Furthermore, he also seemed to have seen something familiar in Hui Yuhao's eyes. However, Hui Yuhao quickly shifted his gaze away immediately after their eyes met, and stopped looking at the White Tiger Duke. What was going on? Hui Yuhao had unleashed his Haodong palm, which was filled with his yearning for Wang Donga and his mother. At such a time, he was prone to losing control of his focus. In addition, Dai Hao was beside him. How could he possibly control his emotions? Jiang Nan flew to Hui Yuhao's side and apologetically said to the White Tiger Duke, "I'm sorry, Duke. Hui Yuhao unleashed his self-invented soul skill earlier and drained too much of his spiritual power. That has affected his emotions, and he's still suffering the side effects of it. Please let him recover first. He's not in his normal emotional state right now." The White Tiger Duke was only enlightened at this point and nodded gently. He replied, "All right, let's return first." Under the protection of the bunch of titled Dolor, everyone turned around and proceeded in the direction of the Northwestern Field Army's base. Very soon, they arrived back at their base. After landing, Hui Yuhao had already recovered significantly. He turned to Shu Sancha and said, "Third Senior, hand the corpse over to the Duke, but grab his things first. He wouldn't be so foolishly generous." Everyone clearly knew that the accessories of a Class 9 soul engineer were very valuable. Wang Yihan's most valuable possession was undoubtedly his Empyrean blaze. Earlier, all the pearls had fallen off. With Hui Yuhao's spiritual senses, he informed Nanqiuqiu and Yi Gai of their rough locations before they went to retrieve them. It was impossible for them to give up possession of these pearls. As for what the Mad Bull Dolor had on him earlier, no one knew. However, they would be a reward for Hui Yuhao and the rest. The White Tiger Duke had mentioned before that they could keep whatever they retrieved. If they were willing to sell them to the Star Luo Empire, the Empire would buy them at market price. This was also why Hui Yuhao didn't ask the White Tiger Duke to coordinate with them earlier. If the Northwestern Field Army's titled Dolor coordinated and reinforced them earlier, who would be the rightful owner of everything that they obtained from the Mad Bull Dolor? The few titled Dolor from the Star Luo Empire looked at one another and appeared a little discontented. This was the base of the Northwestern Field Army. However, the White Tiger Duke's expression didn't change. He nodded and said, "Thanks, Yuhao. I'll ask someone to record your contributions." Hui Yuhao was a little unwilling to look at him right now, and so he didn't. He lifted his right hand, and a streak of blue light shot forward at the empty ground in front of him. Suddenly, a huge soul tool with a diameter of over 2 meters appeared in front of everyone. All the titled Dolor were surprised. Hui Yuhao calmly said, "This is a high-altitude aerial surveillance soul tool that belongs to the Sun Moon Empire. I'm going to give it to the Star Luo Empire. I hope that this will expedite the Empire's research on soul tools. I'm sorry, White Tiger Duke. I'm a little tired, and would like to go and rest first." Yuhao, the White Tiger Duke, was a little agitated when he saw such a huge surveillance soul tool. He actually succeeded, and even killed a titled Dolor. However, Hui Yuhao had turned around and left before he could even express his gratitude. All the titled Dolor present didn't question Hui Yuhao's attitude this time. This was because they were all fixated on the high-altitude aerial surveillance soul tool right now. The value of this item couldn't be measured monetarily. Hui Yuhao's act of letting it out appeased them. Shu Sancha didn't stand on ceremony at all. He took everything that Wang Yihan possessed and put it away in his own storage-type soul tool. He was going to pass it to Hui Yuhao after he fully recovered. Gentle light flashed, and Hui Yuhao revealed a mysterious look on his face. He calmly walked towards his tent as he recalled what had happened earlier. He had unleashed his strongest strike earlier. In addition, he seemed to feel that something in his body had made a breakthrough when he unleashed that strike. It was a magical feeling. It was also at that moment that his soul power improved by leaps and bounds. He was walking before he heard a voice echoing from behind, "Hui Yuhao." Hui Yuhao stopped and turned his head. Tang Wutong took 2 quick steps and rushed to his side. As she looked at him, her expression became more and more perplexed. "Can you tell me the name of your palm strike earlier?" Hui Yuhao nodded and replied, "The Haodong palm, a palm that will last eternally." "The Haodong palm, a palm that will last eternally." Tang Wutong recited the words. Hui Yuhao didn't stop, and continued walking towards his tent. However, Tang Wutong didn't follow him anymore. Rather, she stood where she was, and was in a little daze as she looked at his back. "Haodong palm, Haodong palm." Hao from Hui Yuhao and Dong from Wang Donga. "The Haodong palm, a palm that will last eternally." It seems like my impression of him was wrong. Hui Yuhao and everyone from Shrek Academy went to rest. On the other side, the commander's tent was very crowded right now. The senior commanders gathered, and none of them had the intention to rest. In the center of the tent, the table had already been moved to one side to be replaced by Wang Yihan's corpse and the massive high-altitude aerial surveillance Soul tool right now. When Xu Jiujiu first laid eyes on the high-altitude aerial surveillance Soul tool, she couldn't shift her gaze away anymore. As the highest-ranked individual in charge of the Star Luo Empire's intelligence department, she reported directly to the Emperor of the Star Luo Empire. She had put in a lot of effort for the Sun Moon Empire's own aerial surveillance Soul tools. She had managed to obtain ordinary aerial surveillance Soul tools before. However, those Soul tools had self-destruction mechanisms installed within them. Once they were dismantled, they would blow apart. The Star Luo Empire had suffered a lot because of this. Thus, it was also her first time seeing this high-altitude aerial surveillance Soul tool in front of her. She was completely astonished. Before Hui Yuhao brought it back, Xu Jiujiu didn't expect Hui Yuhao to be so quick even though she had high hopes for him. The value of such a Soul tool couldn't be measured on the surface. It would have an important effect on developing the Star Luo Empire's expertise in Soul tools. "Duke, you saying that Wang Yihan was killed by Hui Yuhao and his comrades?" Xu Jiujiu's voice sounded more high-pitched. The White Tiger Duke recounted everything he had seen earlier to her. Dai Hao nodded. Not to even mention that Xu Jiujiu was in disbelief, he would also be unconvinced if he didn't witness it personally. A few Soul Sages and Soul Emperors actually managed to kill a Class 9 Soul Engineer who was also a titled Doluo. At the same time, the Empyrean Blaze, which was ranked 12th among Class 9 Soul tools, was also almost destroyed. Such an outcome wouldn't be surprising if a few titled Doluo were responsible for it. However, how old were Hui Yuhao and the rest? Their average age might not even be 20 yet. These talents from Shrek Academy demonstrated their strength by performing another miracle. At the same time, they proved their value to all the powerful individuals from the Star Luo Empire. Xu Jiujiu was breathing hard, and didn't make a sound for some time. She couldn't believe something like that had happened. Tonight was even less peaceful than the previous night. He really did it. His abilities? Xu Jiujiu had always found Hui Yuhao very impressive. She had, on 2 occasions, witnessed Hui Yuhao's performances in the Continental Advanced Soul Master Academy Soul Dueling Tournament. In addition, she had even personally fought him before. However, it was only now that she discovered that her past understanding of him really belonged to the past. Right now, Hui Yuhao was beyond her domain of understanding. He was a Soul Sage that wasn't even 20 years old yet, but he was the one who led a kill mission against a titled Doluo. "Duke, do you know how they did it?" Xu Jiujiu swallowed her saliva and asked with some difficulty. The same question was in heads of the other senior commanders from the Star Luo Empire. Dai Yuehang and Dai Loli were standing behind Dai Hao right now. They had also received news of what happened immediately. Dai Yuehang was now very perplexed. He was also from Shrek Academy, and was also a top-performing student in Shrek Academy's inner courtyard. However, he was also in disbelief right now. He clearly knew that neither he nor the representative team he had formed with Ma Xiaodao could possibly accomplish something like this. They were at least 5 years older than Hui Yuhao and the rest, but their overall abilities were far behind. Dai Hao sighed and replied, "I only witnessed what happened at the end. However, I believe that Yuhao and the rest took turns to attack throughout the entire fight." They managed to unleash everyone's fighting strength to the extreme through an effective rhythm. This caused Wang Yihan's power to be continually drained. He only unleashed his full power at the end. Among all of them, 4 played very crucial roles. They are Xu Sanxia, Jiang Nannan, Hui Yuhao, and Ji Juechen. He recounted everything that he had seen. When they watched from afar earlier, they managed to catch hold of Xu Sanxia unleashing his golden Xuanwu's domain before using his turtle god's strike to neutralize the Empyrean blazing bull. After that, it was Jiang Nannan's soft bone lock and invincible golden body, as well as Hui Yuhao's all-out attack. Hui Yuhao's palm strike was the most crucial. The rest were only weakening Wang Yihan, but Hui Yuhao's strike completely destroyed Wang Yihan's Empyrean blaze and dealt him a fatal blow. I heard that it was Hui Yuhao's self-invented soul skill. It even contains the power of his emotions. It should be a self-invented soul skill that's a combination of his soul and spiritual power. When he unleashed that strike, I could sense a weird force field around his body. I was even unwittingly drawn in. Even though it was night time, it felt as if the sky had changed color when he unleashed that strike. It's just that everything seemed to have been turned into nothingness just as he unleashed his strike. A beam of red light glowed from Wang Yihan's body. If I'm not wrong, that beam of red light should be for protective purposes. However, it was crushed by Hui Yuhao's attack before Wang Yihan was hit. Wang Yihan's Empyrean blaze lost the majority of its control after he was struck. After that, there seemed to be a spear that shot out from Hui Yuhao's head, which penetrated his skull and dealt him a heavy injury. At that point, Wang Yihan's injuries were already very serious. Then, Ji Juechen appeared and used his sword to stab the wound that Hui Yuhao had created. This fully ended Wang Yihan's life. What I noticed was that they coordinated very well with one another, unleashing wave after wave of attacks. They complemented one another very well. I figure that there must be a control-type soul master among them. After that, it was Hui Yuhao's attack. There wasn't any evident soul power undulations when he unleashed his attack. However, I could clearly sense that his greatest fighting strength was unleashed at that moment. It was the key to killing Wang Yihan. After listening to the White Tiger Duke's analysis, the titled Dolor that had also witnessed everything all nodded in agreement. Just like the White Tiger Duke had mentioned, Hui Yuhao seemed to have fused with heaven and earth in that state. It was also his palm strike that completely defeated Wang Yihan. Even Wang Yihan wouldn't have expected that. They were able to succeed partly due to Wang Yihan's own complacency. Otherwise, why didn't he use his invincible barrier and soul protective barrier? He must have been very confident in his own attack. It was a pity that his confidence was a reason for his demise. Xu Jiujiu was stunned, and muttered to herself, Yuhao, I didn't expect you to reach such a level already. Duke, if you're talking about a control-type soul master, that person must be Hui Yuhao. The first time I met him, when he was only 12 or 13 years old, he was already a control-type soul master. His spiritual detection can band his teammates together, and he can share accurate information about the enemy with his teammates. This is very effective in counteracting the fighting strength of the enemy. Dai Yuehang should be the most aware of this. The White Tiger Duke turned his attention towards his son, and Dai Yuehang immediately nodded and replied, Her Highness is right. When I first competed in the soul dueling tournament with Hui Yuhao, he always appeared as a control-type soul master. His spiritual detection is very strong. It should be even stronger now than it was before. The White Tiger Duke nodded, and there was an awed look on his face. No wonder he's the future master of the Sea God's Pavilion. No wonder he can become the youngest elder of Shrek Academy at such a tender age. Xu Jiujiu asked, White Tiger Duke, what should we do next? A cold look flashed across the White Tiger Duke's eyes and he said, Hang Wang Yihan's corpse on a flagpole outside the base for everyone to see. At the same time, I'll need you to send some people to bring the high-altitude aerial surveillance soul tool back for research purposes, Your Highness. Okay. Xu Jiujiu immediately acknowledged his words. Hui Yuhao wasn't interested in the guesses or arrangements of the Star Luo Empire. When he returned into his tent, he immediately entered a cultivation state. His soul power circulated. Although he was greatly drained earlier, his last attack through the golden dragon spear had helped to replenish him by absorbing some of Wang Yihan's immense soul power. Wang Qiu's golden dragon spear was terrifying in the sense that it could absorb the life energy and soul power of the enemy to replenish the fighting strength of its owner. Although Hui Yuhao didn't fully inherit her abilities, he was much more complementary to the golden dragon spear after Wang Qiu's sacrifice. He was even more drained in terms of his spiritual power, especially after he was subjected to the side effects of the Haodong palm. Right now, his mind was filled with the figure of Wang Dong. The pain brought about by his yearning for her could only be understood by him. He couldn't focus even after sitting on his bed for a long time. For some reason, he missed her even more today. Perhaps it was because his palm strike had unleashed his greatest fighting strength. Actually, Hui Yuhao knew that the recoil from Wang Yihan's body after he attacked had hurt him. If this were the past, he might have lost his arm. His attack had well and truly drained all his strength. However, he possessed a part of the Golden Dragon's power since he had fused with Wang Qiu. His strength and physical tenacity were much greater than before. This was why he felt extreme guilt towards Wang Qiu at the same time as he missed Wang Dong. These two emotions kept on corroding his mind and spiritual sea. Under such a circumstance, even his four spirits were of no use to him. He could only handle this by himself. Hui Yuhao plopped onto his bed and shut his eyes tightly. He looked very pale, and seemed like he couldn't hold on anymore. He really looked like he couldn't hold on anymore. His yearning for Wang Dong was too immense. It overwhelmed him completely. Dong, are you really alive? He actually always had a thought in his mind, what should he do if the sect and vice-sect leader of the Clear Sky sect were only telling him lies? This was what he feared. Even though he tried his best to steer away from such thinking, he would be overwhelmed with fear every time he had such a thought. Being unable to see Wang Dong forever? What could possibly be more terrifying than that? Dong, Hui Yuhao was groaning softly. Dong, if you've really left this world, then bring me with you. Don't leave me alone in this world to suffer. Dong, I really miss you. Tears flowed down the corners of his eyes. The senior commanders of the Star Luo Empire's Northwestern Field Army couldn't imagine that the young hero in their hearts was actually squirming in his bed right now while crying tears of pain. Hui Yuhao wasn't even clear-headed right now. The curtains to his tent were pulled open, and a tall and slender figure walked into his tent. As she heard Hui Yuhao's groans, her body turned slightly stiff. After that, however, she continued to walk towards Hui Yuhao. Her movements were very slow, as if she found it difficult to walk. However, she suddenly picked up her pace as she came closer to Hui Yuhao's bed. She quickly came to his side and sat down by his bedside. His tears had already wet his blanket. Hui Yuhao's senses were normally very acute, but right now, he actually didn't know that there was someone else in the tent. He continued to squirm and groan in pain. His face was very pale, and buckets of tears and sweat had already fused together as they flowed down his cheeks. Delicate fingers gently caressed his forehead. The movement of the fingers seemed a little stiff and rigid. Hui Yuhao's sweat moistened the white and tender fingers. The fingers seemed to be trembling slightly, and there was a tinge of warmth from them. The lady in the tent was shuddering a little, and was also in a slight state of shock. Dong, don't leave me. Suddenly, Hui Yuhao reached out and grabbed her hand. She was astonished, and wanted to retract her hand. However, his grip was very tight. She didn't struggle, but she could sense that his hands were icy cold. It was icy cold to a terrifying point. It was as if he had lost all the warmth in his body. Don't tell me that he's always in such great pain after he uses his Haodong palm. It was weird, but Hui Yuhao calmed down after grabbing her hand. He stopped shivering as much, but he was still mumbling to himself. However, his pain had evidently been reduced significantly. He's really pitiful. I never thought one could turn out like this from loving someone too much. However, why did he turn his love into a skill? Why doesn't he go and find his lover? Not far outside the tent, there was a person squatting in a dark corner. This person watched as she walked into the tent. A slight smile spread across his face. He slowly stood up. It seemed like he didn't need to stand guard anymore. She didn't come out, even after a long time. This person walked out from the corner. Wasn't he the eternal defense, Shusansha? Hui Yuhao was suffering from the backlash of his Haodong palm, and his body was very weak. Shusansha understood this the best. This was why he followed Hui Yuhao back and stood guard outside his tent as a means of protecting him. However, that lady had been in the tent for a long time without leaving yet. It seemed like he didn't need to carry on with his protection for the rest of the night. He silently left without making a sound. Inside the tent, Hui Yuhao had calmed down. His breathing had become more rhythmic, and he was no longer shivering. At times, he would mumble to himself, but he was evidently in less pain. He used both his hands to grab tightly onto her tender fingers. It was as if he were grabbing hold of some life-saving grass. He wouldn't let go of her hands. Slowly, a satisfied grin surfaced on his face. He had fallen asleep. Following this, moonlight shone in from outside the window. From where she was seated, she caught a view of his profile. She was only here because she was worried about him, and curious about his condition. However, she discovered that she was unable to leave right now. She could most certainly pull her hand back, but she was afraid of harming him in that way, so she didn't do so. He didn't do anything else either. He only tightly grabbed hold of her hand and squirmed in place. He was falling deeper and deeper into his sleep. This is the generational talent that everyone is in awe of? A bitter look appeared across her face. So he's actually this fragile behind the surface. It seems like he has given too much to attain whatever powers he has. But why is he able to calm down after grabbing hold of my hand? Is it because he feels comforted? She retrieved a handkerchief with her other hand and dabbed at the perspiration on his head. Even she didn't know why she did something as intimate as his. He appeared evidently less tense after she wiped off his sweat. It was as if she possessed some kind of magical power that helped him to calm down. His hand started to regain some warmth, and he stopped holding on so tightly. His body also moved with greater ease. She continued to wipe away his sweat. Slowly, she placed her handkerchief to one side, and started to gently caress his hair. He doesn't look too bad. The lines on his face are smooth, and his eyelashes are long. There's some rosiness to his cheeks right now, and the life energy that he's exuding seems to be stronger than anyone else. Unwittingly, she became a little dazed. Just as she was in a daze, he slowly weakened his grip on her hands. Oh, I can finally leave. She gently retracted her hand, which was already covered with sweat. However, she subconsciously clenched her fist, as if she wanted to preserve the warmth that she felt in her hand. After she retracted the hand that she had placed on his head, she silently stood up. He was still sleeping very calmly, and didn't move at all. She silently walked towards the exit of his tent. However, for some reason, she couldn't help but turn back every few steps. His breathing was still as rhythmic as ever. There wasn't any change. Finally, she got to the exit. She turned back and took one last deep look at him. Someone who's so persistent in love like him should be a good guy. Good night, good guy. Morning. The warm sunlight bore down on Hui Yuhao's face through the window. The heat jolted him from his sleep. As he opened his eyes and felt the blinding sunlight, he subconsciously used his hand to cover his eyes. Oh. It's already so late. Why am I not up yet? Normally, he would already be cultivating in bed at this time. As he sat up, everything that had happened the previous night quickly surfaced in his mind. Hui Yuhao subconsciously took a look at his starlight sapphire ring. In his ring were more than 10 high-altitude aerial surveillance soul tools. Yes, we didn't just manage to successfully steal the high-altitude aerial surveillance soul tools last night. We should have killed the Mad Bull Dolor too. I used my Haodong palm. After I returned, I was in excruciating pain. But why am I not feeling anything right now? In the past, he couldn't recover in one night after unleashing his Haodong palm. He needed a period of time to fully recover. Furthermore, he would always be very groggy the next day. However, he was filled with energy right now, and his body was completely at ease. There weren't any side effects. It was as if he had had a perfect night's sleep, and had even overslept. Weird. After scratching his head, Yihan stood up and walked out of his tent. The sun was shining brightly today, and the air was very refreshing. As he took in a deep breath, the refreshing air nourished his body, and he was feeling extremely energetic. Yihan was a little amused as he asked himself, "Why do I feel so relaxed? And why am I in such a good mood?" However, he didn't have an answer. No matter what kind of delicacies he consumed, they weren't able to improve his mood to such a stage. However, he was feeling extremely good today. What exactly happened last night? He furrowed his brow and pondered. He could subtly remember that he was in excruciating pain then. However, Wang seemed to have arrived after that and comforted him, alleviating his yearning for her and the pain that he experienced. After that, his pain disappeared, and he fell into a comfortable sleep. "Donga, did you really come?" Yihan opened his eyes wide. "Don't tell me Donga has always been hiding by my side and she comes when I'm in pain. To comfort me? It's Donga. It must have been her. I must have sensed her aura." He suddenly turned around and charged back into his tent. He leaped onto his bed and took in a deep breath, seeking Wang Donga's scent. However, what scent would be left over after one night? There was only his own smell on his bed. Am I just hallucinating? A strong sense of disappointment left Yihan clenching his fists. However, it was at this moment that his attention was drawn to a corner. He subconsciously reached out his hand and grabbed a squarish handkerchief. This handkerchief was made of silk and felt very soft. It felt like the complexion of a young girl, and there were sweat stains on it. "It doesn't belong to me. It clearly belongs to a lady." Yihan looked at the handkerchief a few times. There weren't any markings on it. There was only a gentle fragrance that came from it. Wang Donga. This really seemed like Wang Donga's scent. Don't tell me that my feeling was right. That Donga really came last night to take care of and comfort me. And she helped me out of my pain? This video will end here.